All right, ready to jump in. We're tackling the Axis powers in World War II today. It's kind of wild when you think about it. Germany, Italy, Japan.
Hmm.
What a strange mix, right? What could bring those three together?
You've hit on it already, really. Even the name Axis powers, it's weird. They didn't call themselves that, you know? It's a label historians stuck on them later on. It shows how awkward the whole thing was.
So we're already dealing with history being written by the winners a bit, huh?
Yeah.
Which I got to say makes it more interesting to untangle. We've got this Wikipedia article you sent over, a great starting point. But before we get into the big three, we can't forget the others.
Oh, for sure. You've got Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria, the all one Axis. And figuring out WHY, that's the juicy part. It's not good guys, bad guys. Simple as that. It's all mixed up old treaties, making folks mad, wanting more land, thinking alike in some ways, even just seeing a chance to grab power.
Wow, it's like a whole recipe for disaster, isn't it? Especially with those big ideologies they each had going on. Germany with the Nazis, Italy being all fascist,
Okay.
then Japan and their own brand of empire building. Like, each one's got their own theme music, but somehow they end up on the same battlefield.
Exactly. And those differences in their thinking, that's key to figuring out what they did. Germany, now under Hitler, Nazism, that was all about Aryan supremacy. They wanted to be on top, a German empire calling the shots. And that racism they had, well, led straight to the Holocaust, right?
Yeah, no getting around that. It's woven into everything they did.
Yeah.
Then there's Mussolini over in Italy trying to bring back the Roman Empire. Sounds kind of romantic almost, but also scary how much they want it.
You got it. Mussolini and fascism, it was all about being in charge, no question. Italy had to be strong, united, even if it meant getting rough. They wanted back what they thought was theirs more land around the Mediterranean, pushing into Africa.
And then there's Japan,
Yeah.
way over there, but just as hungry to grow their empire.
Totally. Japanese imperialism, that came from thinking they were better than others, too, and wanting to control Asia. They called it the Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere, but honestly, it was about taking what they wanted and exploiting people.
So we've got three big players, all wanting more power, all thinking they're in the right. But what actually got them to team up?
It's like they needed each other, in a way. They all hated the way things were, wanted more stuff, more land, but the big thing, they were all scared of the Soviet Union.
The Soviets. Communism really freaked them out, didn't it?
For sure. The Soviet Union was expanding, and their whole communist idea, complete opposite of what the Axis wanted, made them feel like they were under attack, in a way. And that fear, well, that's strong glue, even for countries that don't agree on much else.
And that's where that anti-Comintern pact comes in, am I right? Germany and Japan, 1936, feels like a turning point.
Huge one. Now, on paper, that pact was about stopping communism, right? But really, it was Germany and Japan saying, hey, we want to work together, a sign of what was coming.
And then Italy jumps in a year later,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Making it a real anti-communist crew. It's funny how being scared of the same thing brought them together, even if they were so different.
Yeah, Italy was looking for some muscle on the world stage, you know. Saw a chance to team up with the big boys, Germany and Japan, signing that pact in 1937. Made the Axis official, basically. And, well, that's when things really got rolling toward the war.
Makes you think how fast things change in history, huh?
Yeah.
Especially when you've got fear and ambition all mixed up together. But was it Jade Vest about hating communism? The article mentions other stuff too, like how their economies played into it.
Right, right. It's never as simple as it. So they had some ideas in common, sure, but they also had needs, practical stuff. Germany. After World War I, their economy was in the toilet. They needed resources. BAD. And to sell their stuff, too. Expansion, getting more land, that's how they saw it working out.
Like they were trying to build this huge army and everything, but didn't have all the parts.
You got it. And Japan. Same problem. Not enough stuff to work with. They looked at Asia, all those resources.
Yeah.
Figured that's how well they'll become powerful. It was a match made in, well, not a very nice place, that's for sure. Germany had the factories, the weapons know-how. Japan had the location and things they could get their hands on.
A partnership, but not out of friendship, huh? More like, we need this to work even if we don't like each other. But those kind of partnerships, they're fakey, right? Everybody wants something different in the end. Were there problems in paradise? I mean, in the Axis?
Oh, absolutely. Tons of tension under the surface, mistrust, you name it. Different goals for the war, different enemies even.
Well, that doesn't sound like a winning strategy, does it? What kind of things were they fighting over?
Well, for starters, being so spread out. Good for scaring people, maybe, but tough to actually run in a war that way. Imagine trying to keep track of your allies when they're on the other side of the world.
Like a really, really intense phone call, except with more tanks and bombs.
Exactly. Plus, Even though they were all kind of nationalist, didn't always agree how to be nationalist, Germans, they had that whole thing about race, especially towards Slavic people. Didn't sit well with the Japanese, who had their own ideas about who was better.
So cracks were showing, even if from the outside it looked like one big bad team.
Exactly. And those cracks, they got bigger the longer the war went on. Winning hides problems, But once things started going bad, well, couldn't ignore them anymore.
Was there a moment, like a big turning point, where it all started to fall apart? We talked about Italy not doing so well.
Yeah, Italy. They wanted to be tough, but they weren't ready for a real war. North Africa, the Balkans, they got beat, BAD. Didn't help the Axis one bit. Actually hurt them in the long run.
I bet Germany and Japan were not happy about that. Like, hey, we're counting on you guys.
Oh, they were furious. And it wasn't just that. They started disagreeing on strategy, realizing their goals were kind of different. The Axis, it was coming apart at the seams.
So from the inside out, basically.
Yeah.
All that strength, but it couldn't hold them together.
Just like a house, right. Built on a bad foundation, eventually it's going to crumble. They had their moment, the Axis, but all that ambition and fear, turned out it wasn't enough.
So even with all that going on, all that infighting, they were still a huge EE threat for a while.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Easy to forget, right? How for a time, the Axis, they looked unstoppable almost. The whole world, that's how big their fight was. Allies were stretched thin, fighting everywhere at once, trying to keep up.
It's hard to even imagine, honestly, all those different places, different battlefields.
Yeah.
How do you even plan for that, let alone actually fight?
Never been anything like it before, really. The Allies, they had to come up with totally new ways of fighting, new tech. But the big thing, they had to work together, better than ever before.
I bet, yeah. Having each other's backs was the only way to survive, right?
Absolutely. Think about it. The U.S., Great Britain, the Soviet Union, they weren't exactly best buddies, politically speaking, but they put that aside because the Axis, that was a threat to all of them.
Just how serious it was, huh? That it took that kind of global team up to finally stop them?
And it cost them, big time. So many lives lost, on all sides. Really makes you think, what happens when countries go down that road, all that hate and wanting to take over?
No kidding. So as things went south for the Axis, anything else that really stands out? Like moments where it was clear they were finished. We talked about Italy. What about Germany, Japan? How did their part go wrong?
Well, Germany going after the Soviet Union, 1941, big mistake, turned out. They had some wins early on, but man, they did not think that one through. Russia in the winter, whole different beast.
Underestimated them, maybe. Figured they'd just roll over.
Something like that. But those folks were fighting for their homes, The Eastern Front, it was brutal. Millions died. Just wore the Germans down. They put too much into it.
And Japan, even with Pearl Harbor and all that, they couldn't keep it up either, huh?
Nope. Pearl Harbor, that was a shock, sure. But it woke the U.S. up, basically. And once America's in the fight, full force. Well, nobody's got factories and firepower like that. Japan was outmatched.
So everything changes, alliances fall apart, and the whole world learns a lesson about what happens when things go too far. Heavy stuff.
It is. But also, it's about how strong people can be. Working together even when it's hard to stop something truly bad. Beating the Axis, that changed everything, really. Set the stage for how things are now, more or less.
Wow. It's hard to wrap my head around it. All this stuff that happened, these weird friendships, enemies, and it still matters today, all these years later.
History does that right. It's not just dates and names in a book. It's like the echoes of those things, they're still here. Helps us figure out who WE are even.
I like that. And the more we dig into it, like we did today, the more we learn, I guess. And hopefully avoid making the same mistakes again.
That's the hope, right? Learning from what came before so we build something better.
Exactly. All right, folks, that's going to do it for this deep dive. Hope you found it as fascinating as I did. Until next time.